The wind here does not blow around obstacles, it blows through them. For millennia, the Eurasian Steppe, that endless ribbon of grassland stretching from the Danube all the way to the Great Wall of China, was defined by exactly what it lacked. It lacked walls, it lacked fences, it lacked permanent foundations. It was the domain of the horse, the yurt, and the horizon. To build a city here was to defy the very nature of the geography. And yet, against all ecological and historical odds, this ocean of grass has hosted some of the most radical experiments in urbanization in human history. Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we are not just talking about cities. We are talking about the sheer human audacity required to anchor civilization in a place that wants to keep moving. From the circular bronze fortresses of the ancient Aryans to the mobile tent capitals of the Mongol Khans, and from the brutalist industrial mono-towns of the Soviet Union to the glittering, futuristic skyline of Astana, the story of the steppe city is not one of gradual, peaceful evolution. It is a story of sudden, violent, and visionary impositions of order upon chaos. This is the chronicle of how humanity attempted to anchor itself in the ocean of grass. To understand this, we have to go back long before the Silk Road wove its web of commerce. We have to look at the southern Urals around the year 2100 BCE. Here, the concept of the city flickered into existence in a form that historians are still struggling to categorize. A culture known as the Sintashta Petrovka emerged, leaving behind a landscape scarred with something unprecedented. Archaeologists call it the country of towns. The most famous of these is Archaeum. But if you are picturing a city like Rome or Athens, stop. Archaeum challenges our standard definition of a city. It was not a sprawling organic settlement that grew outward from a marketplace. It was a machine. Built in a perfect circle, with a diameter of roughly 160 meters, Archaeum was a fortified industrial complex. Its layout was hyper-planned. It had two concentric rings of defensive walls, made of clay and timber, housing row houses that faced inward toward a central square. These were not merely dwellings, they were factories. Archaeologists have discovered metallurgical furnaces in almost every single house. This was a militarized production center dedicated to the creation of the ultimate superweapon of the Bronze Age, the war chariot. The residents of Archaeum were not simple farmers. They were specialized engineers and warriors who lived in a garrison state, surrounded by a moat and the endless hostile steppe. Archaeum represents the proto-urban paradox of the region. It was dense, highly organized, and fortified, yet it was not designed to last forever. This is the fascinating part. When resources, likely wood for the furnaces and copper ore, were depleted, the community would not just abandon the city to rot. They would ritually burn the settlement to the ground and move on. This was mobile urbanism. Imagine a heavy, fortified city that functioned like a slow-moving ship, anchoring for a generation to strip the land of resources before setting sail again across the grass. As we move forward in history, into the classical and medieval eras, the function of the steppe city shifted. If the steppe was an ocean, traversable only by the ships of camel caravans and horse archivists, then it needed ports. This is where the great cities of Transoxiana, Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, and Khiva enter the story. These cities rose not because of the fertility of the grass, but because of the scarcity of water. They were oasis cities, hydraulic civilizations dependent on the intricate management of rivers like the Zeravshan and the Amu Darya. These cities became the airlocks between two worlds. On one side, you had the sedentary Persian and Sogdian world of agriculture and commerce. On the other, the nomadic Turkic and Mongol world of war and livestock. This duality is visible in their architecture. Think of the Registan in Samarkand, or the Kalyan minaret in Bukhara. These weren't just religious monuments. They were built to be seen from miles away across the flat horizon. They were lighthouses guiding caravans to safety. The urbanization here was defined by the caravanserai. These were not just hotels. They were proto-corporations, walled compounds within or outside the city where wholesale trade occurred. The layout of a Silk Road city was fractal: a citadel, or arc, for the ruler, a walled inner city, the Shaharstan, for the elite and the mosques, and a sprawling outer suburb, the Rabad, for the artisans and markets, all surrounded by yet another wall to keep out the nomadic raids. But let's be clear, the relationship wasn't always hostile. The nomads needed the city for metal, grain, and luxury goods. The city needed the nomads for wool, meat, and protection. This symbiosis created a unique urban culture where the bazaar was the parliament, a place where the silent laws of the steppe met the written laws of the Quran and the ledger. Everything changed in 1206. When Genghis Khan united the steppe tribes, he did so by rejecting the walled life. The Mongols viewed cities as traps, cages for people who had lost their freedom. Yet, to run an empire that stretched from the Pacific to the Danube, they faced a problem. They needed a capital. Their solution was Karakorum, perhaps the most reluctant capital city in history. Located in the Orkhon Valley, a sacred ancestral ground for steppe empires, Karakorum was built not as a dwelling for the Khan, but as a warehouse for his bureaucracy and a stage for his glory. For most of the year, the real capital was the Ordu, the camp. The Khan's court was a mobile city of thousands of yurts, tens of thousands of horses, and wagons carrying treasuries and shrines. This mobile city would migrate seasonally between winter and summer pastures. Karakorum was merely the anchor where the mobile city docked. However, when the Mongols did build, they built with a specific imperial logic. Karakorum was cosmopolitan by design. Since the Mongols were warriors, not masons, they imported their urbanism. The city was divided into quarters: a Chinese quarter for artisans, a Muslim quarter for merchants, and a citadel for the administration. The centerpiece of Karakorum was the Silver Tree, a mechanical marvel built by a captured Parisian goldsmith named Guillaume Boucher. It stood in the Khan's palace, dispensing wine, mare's milk, mead, and rice wine from the mouths of silver lions and snakes. This tree was the ultimate symbol of steppe imperialism, a man-made root system sucking up the luxuries of the world, Parisian engineering, Chinese silk, Persian wine, and dispensing them to the gathered nomads in the middle of nowhere. Further west, the Golden Horde built Sarai on the Volga. Unlike Karakorum, Sarai became a genuine metropolis, one of the largest in the medieval world, but it retained a nomadic footprint. The city was incredibly spread out, with vast, empty spaces between estates. It was essentially a petrified nomad camp, where mud brick houses replaced yurts, but the spacing remained wide enough for horses and cattle. It was a garden city before the concept existed, a sprawling urban agglomeration that refused to be cramped. As the Silk Road declined, triggered by the rise of maritime trade, the steppe was left vulnerable to a new kind of urbanization, the colonial fortress. From the 16th to the 19th centuries, the Russian Empire advanced into the steppe not with traders, but with surveyors and soldiers. They built lines, chains of forts connected by earthworks and Cossack patrols, to slice the open range into manageable territories. Cities like Omsk, Orenburg, Semipalatinsk, and Verny, which is now Almaty, began as military garrisons. Their urban planning was rigid, geometric, and defensive. The heart of these cities was the parade ground and the church, surrounded by a grid of wooden barracks. This was spearhead urbanization. The city was a weapon used to subdue the surrounding space. Unlike the Silk Road cities, which were porous and trade-oriented, the Russian fortress cities were exclusive islands of European administration in a sea of wild nomads. However, as the empire secured its hold, these forts attracted Tatar merchants and Russian peasant settlers, slowly morphing into administrative trading hubs that exported the raw wealth of the steppe: hides, meat, and later, grain. But if the Russian Empire sliced the steppe, the Soviet Union bulldozed it. The communist ideology was inherently urban and industrial. It viewed the nomadic lifestyle as backward, and the open steppe as wasted space. This worldview birthed two massive waves of urbanization that permanently scarred the landscape. First came the Gulag Archipelago and the industrial monotowns. In the 1930s and 40s, the steppe became the dumping ground for enemies of the state. Vast networks of labor camps were established in Karaganda and Zhezkazgan. These camps were the seeds of major cities. Karaganda was built literally on top of coal mines by the people forced to work in them. This created the Mono City, or Monogorod, a city that exists for a single purpose, to extract one resource, be it coal, copper, or uranium. These cities were not located near water or trade routes, but exactly where the geology dictated. They were triumphs of will over geography, supplied by rail, heated by massive central plants, and housed in identical brutalist concrete blocks. They were urban islands disconnected from the local ecosystem, surviving only through the umbilical cord of the planned economy. Then, in the 1950s, Nikita Khrushchev launched the Virgin Lands campaign, known as Tselina, to turn the northern Kazakh steppe into the breadbasket of the USSR. This was urbanization as an invasion. Hundreds of thousands of young volunteers and deportees were shipped to the middle of the plains to build agrogoroda, agricultural cities. The vision was to erase the distinction between the peasant and the worker. These settlements had the amenities of a city, clubs, cinemas, libraries, but were surrounded by endless wheat fields. The result was a demographic upheaval. The indigenous Kazakh population became a minority in their own land, and the ecology of the steppe was devastated by wind erosion, creating dust bowls caused by plowing land that should have been left to graze. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 left the steppe with a rust belt of dying industrial cities and a confused identity. But in 1997, Kazakhstan made a move that stunned the world. President Nursultan Nazarbayev moved the capital from the leafy, comfortable southern city of Almaty to the windswept, freezing northern city of Akmola, renaming it Astana. Astana is the ultimate post-Soviet steppe city. It is a deliberate act of nation-building, a declaration that the steppe is not just a place to cross or exploit, but a place to rule. Astana does not blend in. It stands in stark contrast to the flat horizon. The city was master-planned by Japanese architect Kisho Kurokawa, but the reality is a collection of architectural monuments that scream permanence. Take the Bayturek Tower, a golden orb in a tree, symbolizing the myth of the Samruk bird, rooting Kazakh mythology in the center of the modern city. Or look at the Khan Shatir, designed by Norman Foster. This is the world's largest tent, a 150-meter-tall transparent polymer structure. Inside, it maintains a tropical climate with a beach and sand imported from the Maldives. It is a neo-nomadic structure, a permanent yurt that conquers the brutal climate by creating its own internal weather. Astana is a smart city built on the old steppe. It faces the age-old problems: how to keep warm, how to get water, and how to stop the wind. But it solves them with 21st century technology. A massive green belt, a man-made forest of millions of trees, is being planted around the city to break the wind and alter the microclimate. It is a terraforming project of massive scale. So where does that leave us today? Urbanization in the Eurasian steppe stands at a new crossroads. The Chinese Belt and Road Initiative is reviving the logic of the ancient Silk Road. New dry ports like Korgos on the China-Kazakhstan border are popping up. These are cities built entirely around logistics, vast container terminals where rail gauges change and goods are transferred. They are the new caravanserais, built of steel and software. However, the challenges are existential. First, there is ecological collapse. The Soviet legacy of diverting rivers, which famously killed the Aral Sea, haunts the region. As glaciers melt and rivers dry up, the water-intensive cities of the steppe face a crisis. The oasis model may not hold forever. Second, we see the shrinking monotown. As the world moves away from coal and heavy industry, the Soviet industrial cities are becoming ghost towns. The population is draining toward the capitals like Astana, Tashkent, and Ulaanbaatar, leaving vast stretches of the steppe empty once again. And finally, look at Mongolia. The capital, Ulaanbaatar, is an example of unplanned nomadic urbanization. Half the population lives in the Gerd districts, sprawling suburbs of felt tents with no running water or central heating. They burn coal to survive the winter, making the city one of the most polluted on Earth. This is the dark side of the sedentarization of the nomad. Urbanization in the Eurasian steppe has always been a struggle between the static and the mobile. The ancient nomads proved that you don't need a city to have an empire. The Soviets tried to prove that you could force a city onto any landscape if you had enough concrete. The modern independent states are trying to find a middle path, cities that honor the nomadic heritage through symbolism and culture, while integrating into the global static economy of high-rises and fiber optics. To walk through a steppe city is to feel this tension. You stand in the shadow of a glass skyscraper, but if you look down the street, you see the horizon, flat and endless, beckoning you to leave the walls behind. The steppe city is a triumph of human stubbornness, a concrete stake driven into the heart of the wind, declaring, "We are here, and we are not moving." Thanks for listening to G Fun Facts Online.